Hi, it's time for a Messianic moment with yours truly, Stephen Bruck. Before we start, please go to the right side of the messianicmoment.com website and click on subscribe so that you'll be notified when I have new postings. And if you're watching the video, you can subscribe also. Go to the bottom right hand corner, click on the little Messianic Moment icon. I really appreciate your being there and listening. I hope this edifies you. And if you wouldn't mind, if you want to make comments, I really appreciate them, but make them on the website so that other people can see them, because many people just read these instead of watching the video. Thanks again for being here. Today's Parsha starts with the creation of the menorah and the lighting of it. We are also told the Levites are sanctified for service in the Tabernacle, and that this being the 14th day of the first month of the second year since they left Egypt, the people celebrate Passover. Now, some people were unclean because they came in contact with a dead body and they couldn't celebrate the Passover, so God establishes through Moses that if you're unclean for the first Passover, on the 14th day of the second month, you can have Passover then. But you have to pay attention still to all the rules. We talked about the order of march, and Moses gives the listing of the people in charge of each of the tribes and how they would move out and how they would go in which order, where the sanctuary went, and also the fact that it was always based on the cloud over the sanctuary. When the cloud was on the sanctuary, the people stayed. When the cloud was lifted up, the people packed up and went. And it didn't matter how long the cloud was there, overnight, a few days, a week, or years. God tells Moses also to make some silver trumpets, 2 of them, and these are to be used specifically to announce gathering of the people, to give an alarm, and also to prepare the people for war. Now in chapter 11, we read how the people were murmuring and complaining about not having any meat or vegetables, and they wanted meat to eat. So God miraculously sent so many quails that they actually had enough meat for the 1 million or so people to eat for a month. The downside is that because of their complaining, God punished them with a plague. And that started even when they were taking the first bites of the meat. And during this, Moses is so overwhelmed by the constant complaints of the people, they're fetching about everything, that he literally goes to God and asks for help. And God says, get 70 elders. I'll put some of your spirit on them. They'll help you out. The final chapter, chapter 12, is the retelling of when Miriam and Aaron come against Moses by reason of him having a Cushite wife. Now, we don't know if this is Zipporah, his first wife, or if he took a second wife. And we don't know if Cushite meant that she was a Midianite, or she could have been an Ethiopian. We don't know. But we do know that they complained about it. And in the Talmud, it says that God says, Moses is so meek he won't even stand up for himself, so I'll stand up for him. And God says, hey, you want to complain to Moses, you come complain to me. And God wasn't very happy about that. So he punishes them, and Aaron gets off because he's the Kohen Hagadol, the high priest. But Miriam is struck with leprosy. Moses prays for her healing. God relents and says, okay, but she still has to be shut outside the camp for 7 days, which also is in accordance with the regulations regarding cleanliness and uncleanliness due to leprosy. Now, I actually like this particular chapter for 2 reasons. The first reason is because Moses' prayer for the healing of his sister is short, simple, and easy. Oh Lord, please heal her. I often talk about how people sometimes just go on and on with prayer, and what really matters about prayer is not how loquacious you are, but the attitude of your heart. The second reason I like it is because many, many centuries ago, when I was being bar mitzvahed, that portion was my reading. All right, so what to say? There is always so much here to talk about. Let's talk about the quails. All right, so to review, people complaining they have nothing but manna to eat. The Parsha tells us that sometime around the second year, the beginning of the second year, being in the desert. So if the people brought as much meat and vegetables as they could when they left Egypt, how long could it have lasted? I mean, a few days? 2 weeks maybe? I don't know. In the heat of the desert, the vegetables certainly wouldn't last long. I think we can safely assume that people have pretty much been eating nothing more than manna for months. Now, I know what you're thinking. They had sheep, they had goats, they had cows. If they wanted meat, they could have slaughtered them and eaten them. But you see, that would be counterproductive. You got to remember that even though they were shepherds, very rarely did they actually slaughter their own animals. And this is why. A dead goat feeds you for a few days. But a live goat gives you milk, and from milk you can make cheese. And it does that for years. So, as these people are complaining about they don't have meat, Moses is totally overwrought with the complaints of hundreds of thousands of people. And he goes to God and he says, this is how it's going to be. Just shoot me now. Get it over with. God says, no. Not going to happen. Get 70 elders. And what I'll do is I will put your spirit on them. And also, I'm going to give the people meat. In fact, I'm going to give them so much meat. It's going to come out of their mouths and their nostrils. They're going to hate it. And Moses is amazed. He's even a little doubtful. He says, God, you kidding me? Really? And God sets him straight. Hey, you watch. You watch. So a strong wind blows from the sea, and millions of quails are carried right into the camp. In fact, there's so many of them that they're about 3 feet deep all around the camp for miles. And I can say that because the Bible tells us that there was about a day's walk in all directions covered with quails, and that the quails were 2 cubits deep. Now, a cubit generally is considered to be from the elbow to the end of the finger. So that's 18 inches generally. So it's 36 inches. It's 3 feet, folks. That's a lot of quails. Again, but no sooner do they eat the quails than they fall victim to a plague. Could this be the first recorded case of avian flu? In any event, thousands died. So, I have to ask myself, why would God have given them the meat they asked for and then basically caused it to turn against them? I mean, if he was really angry that they complained against him, why not just punish them? Why not refuse to give them meat? I don't have the answer. God knows why he did what he did, and he didn't think it important enough for Moses to write down and tell us exactly this is why he did it. But if I was to guess, I would say God had 2 reasons for doing what he did. One, he gave them the meat to show that he's able to supply all their needs. And 2, he punished them for their complaining, but it wasn't because they complained about not having meat or vegetables. I believe the punishment was because they said they had it better in Egypt. Okay? Let's see actually what was really said when this happened. Okay? Let's go look at Numbers chapter 11. Tell the people, consecrate yourselves in preparation for tomorrow, when you will eat meat. The Lord heard you when you wailed. If only we had meat to eat. We were better off in Egypt. Now the Lord will give you meat, and you will eat it. You will not eat it for just 1 day, or 2 days, or 5, 10, or 20 days, but for a whole month, until it comes out of your nostrils, and you loathe it, because you have rejected the Lord who is among you, and have wailed before him, saying, why did we ever leave Egypt? So I think it was bad enough when the people showed distrust in God by complaining, but when they went so far as to say that it was better in Egypt, boy, that really cut it. For 400 years, they were wailing and crying before God, asking for freedom from their taskmasters, and here they are now, free. Not just free, but God got rid of the Egyptians. God is giving them water and food in the desert. God is bringing them to a promised land full of milk and honey. God says he will protect them, and God has even given them a cloud of day and a fire by night as a sign of his divine presence. And after all this, they say they want to go back to Egypt because it was better under the taskmasters of Egypt than to have the living God in their camp? All because in Egypt they could eat vegetables and meat? These people were saying that they would rather have vegetable and meat instead of the presence and gifts of God. I think that's really what it came down to, isn't it? Do you agree? If they had it better in Egypt, then they're saying all they have now is not as good. Forget the tabernacle, forget freedom, forget promised land. I'll trade it all in right now for a good steak and potatoes dinner. Sugar. But I have to ask, are we any different today? Do we yearn for the physical pleasures of the flesh so much that we are willing to forget about the eternal joy that comes with living a holy life? How many eat what they want to because they would rather have a ham sandwich than receive blessings from God for obeying His law about not eating pork? And look, even if you want to argue about kosher laws, as being not necessary, by the way, you'd be wrong, but that's for a different discussion. Even if we just look at the basic idea that in Deuteronomy 28, God promises that when we obey Him, we will be blessed, and He gives us the whole list of blessings. So, if God said, don't eat pork, whether you think you're subject to Torah or not, it's still going to be good. If you don't eat pork, you're going to get blessed. So, whatever your feelings about kosher laws, obeying them will gain you blessings. So, aren't blessings from God the best thing we could hope for? Yes, of course they are. Then why do so many people prefer pork rinds and shrimp cocktails to blessings? Again, this is just an example of how we may be exchanging what God has planned for us for the things of the flesh that we're used to having. I think this Shabbat we should all of us, look in the mirror for a few minutes and ask ourselves, am I ready to leave Egypt? And what has God got for me? Egypt, of course, representing the world and the desires of the flesh. God will lead us on our journey of righteousness. He will help us to find what we need. He will supply us with all we require and deliver us to the promised land. But we're going to have to be willing to give up some vegetables and meat that we loved so much in our slavery before we started our walk with God. It's a tough decision to walk with God. I mean, Yeshua says we must give up pretty much everything, pick up our execution stake if we want to follow Him. And following Yeshua means obeying God. Obeying God means obeying what God said we should do in the Torah. Torah obedience will not earn you salvation, but it will earn you blessings. Again, Deuteronomy 28. As for me, I prefer the blessings of God to the vegetables and meat of Egypt. What about you? So, something to think about this Shabbat as we think on God. Again, thank you for listening. I appreciate you being there. Don't forget to subscribe, share me out, and I look forward to the next time we're together. Shabbat Shalom.